my sewing friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Silvia, and what I like to do here is sharing my most favorite sewing patterns with you. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you step by step how to make this dress that I'm wearing now and that you have seen in the intro. As pattern, I have used the Indigo Dress by Tilly and the Buttons, and I have used a combination of the original pattern and the add-on because I wanted buttons at the back instead of the zip and the tiered panel at the bottom in the skirt. As always, I will link everything down below in the description box. As fabric, I have used this very cute pink gingham cotton that I found in a lovely local shop called Masons in Abingdon here in the UK. And I think that's it. Are you ready? Let's go!
For this pattern we will need one front bodice, 2 button back bodice pieces, 2 button back facing which I have already interfaced, 1 front neckline facing, again already interfaced, and 4 pocket interfacing strips. Four pocket pieces, 2 short sleeves, 2 bottom tier panels, and front and back skirt panels. Start by sewing a line of stay stitching on the neckline for the front and back bodices, 10 mm from the edge. Start from one shoulder to the center and then from the other shoulder to the center again. This step will help the neckline to keep its shape. For this step, don't worry too much about backstitching as it's not really necessary. Finish the raw edges of the shoulders for both the front and back panels with an overlocker or zigzag stitch. On the front bodice, pin the darts placing the marked lines on top of each other, right sides together. Sew them starting from the raw edge of the fabric and sewing on top of the lines marked before. At the end, leave a long trail of thread so you can make a couple of knots to secure them in place. Pin the front bodice to the 2 back bodices right sides together and sew the shoulder seams following a 15 mm seam allowance. Press the seams open and press the darts facing down. Put the bodice on the side for now. Start working on the facing by pinning the front facing piece to the back facing pieces, right sides together. Sew them following a 15 mm seam allowance and press the seams open. Finish the outside edge of the facing with an overlocker without trimming. Open up the bodice at the shoulders and lay it flat on the table right side facing up. Place the facing on top of it, right sides together, and pin it in place starting from the center and following with the side seams and notches. Stitch keeping the interfacing face up on the sewing machine. I'm using a walking foot for this step. It makes it a lot easier to feed the fabric through the machine when you have 2 layers of different thickness, like in this case. Clip the curved edges every 2 cm or so, and press the facing and seam allowance away from the bodice. Sew a row of understitching so that the seam allowance and the facing are kept together. The corners are going to be a bit tricky, so keep going as far as possible. Turn it right side out and make the corners knit with a point corner. Press with an iron. With an erasable pen, mark the buttonholes, making sure that they are evenly spaced from each other. Before sewing, I always make a test on a piece of scrap fabric, so I'm confident that it's going to work. Open up the buttonholes with a seam ripper and mark where the button should go by overlapping the 2 back bodice pieces. Sew the buttons in place. Let's now move on to the skirt. I have already fused in place the 4 pocket interfacing strips, aligning them to the pocket notch and pressing with an iron on the wrong side of the fabric. Pin the pockets in place on the right side of the fabric and sew along the side seams. Press the pockets away from the skirt and understitch the seam allowance to the pocket bag close to the seam line. Now place the front skirt over the back skirt, right sides together and pin in place. Sew them together starting from the waistline and following the pocket marks to know when to pivot, to sew around the pocket themselves. Sew 2 lines of gathering stitches at the waistline of the skirt, setting the machine to the longest stitch length available and avoiding backstitching. Once that's done, mark the center points of the skirt with a pin or with a marker. I then realized that I missed a step previously and I forgot to baste the 2 back bodices together at the bottom edge to keep them in place, so I'm doing that right now. After that, I mark the center points of the bodice as well. Start pulling the 2 lines of stitches to create the gathers. Do this carefully as you really don't want to break your threads and start all over again. Once the skirt and the bodice are of the same width, insert the bodice inside the skirt, right sides together, and pin them in place. Start from the center point and then matching the side seams too. Keep pinning, adjusting the gathers as you go along, and sew together. When I do this step, I like to keep the gathered layer on top, so I can make sure the gathers are evenly distributed, as it's much easier moving them around this way. Let's move on to the sleeves now. I have already sewn 2 rows of gathering stitches at the top of the sleeves. Now pin them in place, making sure to match the notches of the sleeves to the one on the bodice. Then pull the threads until the sleeve is perfectly fitting the armholes and pin all around. Sew all the way around following the usual seam allowance, and finish the raw edge with an overlocker or zigzag stitch. This is how the sleeves should look like on the inside once you have finished the raw edge with an overlocker. For the hem, fold over the overlocker stitches twice. If you don't have one, you can just fold the fabric of 7 mm twice and top stitch it. Here I'm measuring how far from the edge I want to top stitch and moving the needle according to the measurements. This way I know I will catch the 2 layers of fabric underneath. Pin the 2 bottom tier panels at the sides and sew together. After that, sew another 2 rows of gathering stitches at the top edge. Mark again the center points of this now super long loop of fabric, and with a lot of patience, pull the threads to make the bottom tier the same width of the skirt. Pin in place, starting from the center points and then moving to the side seams right sides together. Sew again with a 15 mm seam allowance. Check that you are happy with the way it looks from the outside and then remove the gathering stitches that are visible. Finish the raw edge with an overlocker and hem it in the same way we have done with the sleeves previously. That would technically be the end of the sewing process for this dress, but after I tried it on, I thought that I would appreciate having some straps on the sides that I can tie at either the front or the back just to give me a bit more shape. So here I'm measuring 2 long rectangles of fabric that are about 80 cm long and 3 cm wide. I fold them in half and sew along the long edge for then turning them inside out with a safety pin. I also fold the short end over itself twice and sew it in place. And this is how it looks in the end. I have carefully ripped a tiny space in the side seams of the bodice and inserted the straps in. I sew them in place, backstitching a few times to make sure that they are nice and secure. That's it for today. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it before you leave, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching!